My name is Austin Hutchinson. I am in History-101-W01X with Professor Maniatis of Muskegon Community College. Today I will be presenting the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was written by a group of 13th century barons to protect their rights and property against King John. These barons wanted King John to stop taxing them absurd amounts to fund wars that weren't even working. They wanted freedom. They wanted to own their own land without going into debt just to help King John. A baron was someone that would pledge loyalty as well as service to their leader, and in return for that loyalty and service, they got land that they could pass on to their heirs after they passed away and their heirs became of age. The Magna Carta addresses many particular matters the barons were concerned with, as well as specific issues with the feudal system under their tyrant, King John of England. The Magna Carta, in its direct translation, quite literally means Great Charter of Freedom. These barons just wanted to have freedom against King John. They didn't want King John to be able to control anything and everything that they stood for. So who was involved? The 25 barons who wrote the Magna Carta and confronted King John to get him to sign it were really the main faces behind the Magna Carta. King John, the King of England, signed the Magna Carta on June 15 in the year 1215 in a field at Runnymede. This red arrow on the screen that points to the map is pointing to the field at Runnymede, exactly where King John signed the Magna Carta. King John really only signed the Magna Carta to prevent a civil war. Just 10 weeks later, after he signed it, Pope Innocent III nullified the whole entire agreement and England went into war. Pope Innocent III only nullified the agreement because King John requested so. The main people involved were the 25 barons who wrote the Magna Carta and wanted their freedom, King John, who signed the Magna Carta in the year 1215, and then Pope Innocent III, who nullified the Magna Carta's agreement, which then led to the war. So who was this King John? John was the son of King Henry and Eleanor of Aquitaine. He was born at the end of 1166 or early 1167 at the Tower of London. Henry ruled from the Pyrenees in the south of France all the way to the border of Scotland. He dominated the rulers of the British Isles as well as large swathes in the French kingdom that were notionally bound to the French king. Young Henry, King Henry II's son, attempted to be king. He was crowned while his father was still alive, which is highly unusual. But sadly, young Henry died in 1183 in his second major battle as king. Originally, Henry's son Richard was supposed to become King of England. Richard was already the Duke of Aquitaine. Richard became far too greedy. He wanted to remain the Duke of Aquitaine. He wanted to have all the land in England, Normandy, Anjou, as well as Aquitaine. Originally, King John was supposed to switch places, and Richard was supposed to be King of England, and John was supposed to be Duke of Aquitaine. That did not work out well because Richard just got far too greedy. Because of this, King Henry II gave permission to his sons, John and Geoffrey, to wage war on the older son, Richard, for his major greediness. After Henry II died in 1189, his Jessier, Ranulph de Glanville, took over, which means he was the most powerful man in the realm after the king. This made Glanville the most ideal tutor for John. Glanville knew the ins and outs of what to do as king, and he taught John what to do. John then was crowned king in 1199. Who were the barons? The barons who wrote the Magna Carta were near the top of the feudal hierarchy. The barons had castles, villages, farmlands, etc. The power of the barons held over their lands they owned were that of a mini king. They had their own private armies, their own court and officials, and certainly their own dynasty. The barons were the leaders of their land, so the people followed the barons. So when the barons spoke out about what they were doing with the Magna Carta, all of their followers and all of their lands completely agreed with them because it was their mini king. That's who they worked for. The barons rejecting King John on May 5, 1215, and the rebellion that followed forced King John to sign the Magna Carta at the field of Runnymede. Some barons had personal reasons why they wanted to wage war on King John. For example, number 1 being Robert Fitzwalter said that King John tried to seduce his daughter and have his son-in-law executed. Number 2 being Geoffrey Mandeville. He was forced to marry King John's ex-wife and pay the king 20,000 marks to get permission to marry the woman, even though Geoffrey didn't even want to marry her. So he had to pay to marry a woman that he was forced to marry. The main reason that all barons could agree on for wanting to wage war on the king and get their voices heard was because they wanted to stop him from arbitrarily taking their money and land. King John's brother left the royal treasury completely empty from fighting in a war with the King of France. To make up for this and keep funding that same war that already wasn't working, King John charged his subjects absurd amounts of money. The barons could no longer pay the king what he was asking, and the ones that could were going into debt trying to do so. King John went to France with an army in the year 1214 to invade and returned home a few months later completely defeated. The money that was taken from the barons was to support unsuccessful wars. So therefore, people went into debt for absolutely nothing. This only enraged the barons more. All the money that they paid King John, all the debt they went into, was to fund a war that wasn't working, was to fund a war that they ended up being defeated in. King John demanding absurd amounts of money from his subjects, and then the war that the money went into funding ending up unsuccessful was one of the most major reasons for the rebellion from the barons, knights, and plenty of other landowners across England. Everyone was upset with King John. The unsuccessful war, the money that was being taken from them for nothing. They were completely outraged and they wanted their voices to be heard. They wanted freedom. Influenced. The moral and political premise that America was founded on was created by the Magna Carta. Everything that America was founded on was originally thought of in the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta came to represent the idea that the people can assert their rights against an oppressive ruler and that the power of government can be limited to protect those rights. The Magna Carta made it illegal for the king to tax the nobles without their permission, gave landowners the right to equal treatment under the law, gave landowners the right to trial by their peers, and gave nobles the right to rebel if the king broke his agreement. If one were to read the Magna Carta and then read the Constitution, obviously they wouldn't be the same, but it would be impossible to deny similarity because of how much America was founded on with the Magna Carta. The First Barons' War. The Magna Carta was signed by King John in 1215, and later in that same exact year, the Magna Carta was annulled by Pope Innocent III per King John's request. This political document did not even last a year, and yet it was so important. The First Barons' War began as a result of this nullification. It lasted 2 years, from the year 1215 to the year 1217. King John died in the middle of this war in the year 1216. Henry III, King John's 9-year-old son, and his whole regency took over leadership in England. So after King John died, his 9-year-old son technically became the king, but the whole regency helped King John in figuring out how to please the people and how to get over this war. This regency reissued the Magna Carta after editing it to get rid of the radical sections in order to reunite the country under King Henry III's rule. This did not work because the barons were still unimpressed. The barons wanted more. The barons originally wanted the Magna Carta. King John couldn't do that, so that made the barons want even more. They wanted their voices to be heard. They wanted freedom. They wanted rights. They wanted more. By the year 1217, the war had ended and a new peace treaty with the foundation of the Magna Carta's terms was put in place by Henry III's regency. Only 4 of the 37 clauses of Henry III's charter clauses remain on the statute book today. This shows that even after hundreds of years, people still look at these major political documents that were modeled after the Magna Carta and still use those today. Importance of the Magna Carta over the years. Over multiple decades and centuries, the Magna Carta's importance always changed depending on who was king at the time. The principles of the Magna Carta, no matter what, always stayed intact. Whether a king thought the Magna Carta was not to be looked at as a political document, whether the king thought the Magna Carta was something that everybody should be following. No matter what the king thought, the principles and the concept of the Magna Carta was something that nobody could get rid of. No matter how much the importance of the Magna Carta changed from king to king, the path towards limited government and individual rights had been planted and continued to grow. In the 17th century, the Magna Carta had been closely tied to the belief in a fundamental law. People, no matter what, already knew about the Magna Carta. They wanted the Magna Carta. They wanted the concepts, the ideas. They wanted the freedoms that the barons were talking about all those years ago. Although the Magna Carta had a short life as a working political document, less than a year actually, the ideas that it instilled in people all around the world about limiting government control and having individual rights as human beings changed the path of all future political documents, including the ones that America has today. This being the Constitution. So, how is it related to America? The Magna Carta was written to protect only barons, of course. But the concept behind the Magna Carta is what caught on and began to spread. By the 17th and 18th century, people used the Magna Carta as a foundation for their fight for more individual rights and protection. As people moved all across the globe, they spread these ideas of individual rights. They spread the ideas of less taxation. They spread the ideas of freedom, and everybody wanted these. Everybody caught on. It spread like wildfire all across the world. The ideas from the Magna Carta are exactly what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are modeled after. This is because as English settlers came over to North America, they were promised the same liberties as they had in England. America could not expect English individuals to come to America and have less liberties. They came to America wanting not only the liberties that they already had, but more. This made America think about what should we do to make people want to come here. William Penn and Thomas Jefferson's ideas of liberty and freedom were influenced as they understood and agreed with the Magna Carta more and more. Our founders read the Magna Carta, our founders agreed with the Magna Carta, and our founders based our most important documents on the Magna Carta and how freedom was so important in that one single, short-lived piece of political justice. Clauses 39 and 40 in the Magna Carta are still the most famous today. Clause 39 states, "No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers in the law of the land." This is our statement of innocent until proven guilty. We cannot put a person in jail just for thinking that they robbed a bank. We have to prove that. There has to be legitimate proof that someone did something before they can get in trouble for it. Clause 40 stated, "To no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice." This is our statement of no one denied the right to a speedy and fair trial. America took these ideas from the Magna Carta and just reworded them to what would work in our country. These clauses are in the Constitution today. We use these every single day. Everybody uses them. We never realize how far back these ideas go until we look into it. So the big overview. The Magna Carta was originally just an attempt by the barons to gain some individual rights from their king that was controlling them and everything they owned. The barons did not think that this political document would go and be the building blocks and foundation of so many future political documents. The barons just wanted the Magna Carta, the Great Charter of Freedom, to represent what they wanted. They didn't want to be taxed anymore. They didn't want King John to control them. They just wanted freedom. Since then, the Magna Carta has grown to become a major piece of history that has influenced multiple peace treaties and historical documents. Some examples are Henry III's peace treaty, the Declaration of Independence, as well as the Constitution. We use all of these every single day. The Constitution is something that protects us in ways that we don't even realize until we really look into it. The Declaration of Independence is what we celebrate every single year. Henry III's peace treaty ended that civil war. The Magna Carta is just the laying foundation of all of these, and the writers simply built upon the ideas of the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is something that is still referenced today in the concept of freedom and rights. People reference the Magna Carta in school, in political settings, in society. People look at the Magna Carta as something to cherish and really focus on how important it was. The birth of the Magna Carta was a major turning point in our history. People brought these ideas of freedom all over the whole world and spread the concept of individual rights to everyone. This led to other people wanting these same exact rights and change, and it affected the world like a domino effect. If somebody went to another country and preached about their new peace treaty or their constitution or their Declaration of Independence, and they went to a country that didn't have those things, those ideas of freedom and liberty and just having rights would catch on so fast, and everybody would spread these ideas. This would make everybody want these exact same things. And it did. It went all over the world, and everybody ended up wanting these. The Magna Carta affected the world in ways that nobody will ever be able to understand until they completely look into everything. This is my works cited. I used King John and the Road to the Magna Carta. That is a book by Stephen Church. I used that mainly on slide 4, but I took pieces throughout the whole book. I used the website Constituting America, written by George Landreth, on slides 6 through 9. These were my slides on really just who the barons were and the war and what the Magna Carta influenced. I used the Magna Carta from the UK Parliament on slide 11. That was a website. I used the Magna Carta barons on slide 5 and 6. That really just helped me dive into who the barons really were. That was also a website. I used the National Archives and Records Administration on slides 2 and 3 on really who was involved in the Magna Carta and what it was. That was a website. I did use a Wikipedia website solely for my title slide background. I did not use it for any information. And then I used the book Magna Carta, The Heritage of Liberty by Anne Pallister on slides 8 and 9, covering the First Barons' War and the importance over the years up from the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is something that everybody should be thankful for, and we should look back and really appreciate how important it was to not only American society, but the whole entire world in so many different countries. Thank you for listening.